Something's weird in Santa Clara right now, and it's not the normal off-season smoke we're all used to. There's a name at the most sensitive spot on the roster that's suddenly catching trade chatter, even though the public tone is basically, we're not doing that. At the same time, one of the fastest, scariest receivers of the last decade hits the market, but you're staring at a knee question and a price tag question right away. Then you've got an elite edge rusher leaving these little Bay Area breadcrumbs like he's dipping a toe in the water. And on top of all that, a physical, fan-favorite wideout could end up with a contract that feels totally fine today and feels heavy 2 years from now. So I'll put it on you straight. Do you play it safe, or do you swing hard? Because this is what a lot of people are missing. This isn't 4 separate debates. It's one giant dilemma, just wearing 4 different uniforms. And I'm telling you, the wildest part doesn't really land until the end. Let's hit the alarm first, because this is the kind of decision that can quietly wreck a season before you even realize it happened. We've seen it. Mac Jones stepped in when the roster started coming apart, and what he gave you wasn't just backup vibes. He stabilized things. 8 games played, 5 wins with a backup quarterback, that's not normal. That's a contender surviving when plan A isn't there. And the second a backup shows you that kind of steadiness, the phone starts ringing. Desperate GMs, coaches trying to save their jobs, teams that whiffed on the quarterback plan and need a lifeline, fast. That's when the temptation gets real. Sell high, grab a premium pick, keep it moving. Kyle Shanahan made it pretty clear at his exit press conference that he's not into the idea of trading him. And honestly, I get it. Because the most important insurance policy for a Super Bowl caliber team isn't your 5th D lineman or your 3rd nickel corner. It's who grabs the keys if Brock Purdy misses time. You need someone who won't crater the offense, someone who understands the system, someone who isn't trying to play hero ball every snap. Mac, whether you love that name or you roll your eyes at it, showed he can run the structure with real steadiness. The worst trades are the ones that feel like a win the day you announce them, and then you're paying for it later. Chris Sims put it as clean as you possibly can. You only move Mac if you already know you've got another backup who can function if Purdy goes down. Because the classic NFL mistake is getting cheap at that spot, and then your entire year spirals the minute your starter tweaks something. And from a real 49ers perspective, this roster is built to win now. The pressure of the Shanahan era, the expectation of being in the mix deep into January, none of that works if you're basically praying for perfect health over 17 games. That's not football. That's hoping. Now be honest with me, faithful. There's a number that makes every "we're not doing that" line disappear. If somebody is dangling a first-round pick for a backup quarterback, you have to at least listen. That's a cost-controlled starter for 5 years, or ammo to move up in the draft, or a premium piece for the offensive line or defensive front. But let's keep it real. Teams almost never pay that for a backup. The realistic ceiling is probably a second-rounder, maybe with conditions. And that's where the fan base splits instantly. One side says, sell high. Shanahan can find another guy to run this. The other side says, don't touch the parachute. You're gonna hate this in September. I'm staying firm on this. Unless the offer is so ridiculous it knocks you back in your chair, you keep Mac. Because losing 2 or 3 games due to bad quarterback insurance costs more than a pick that might hit, or might not. And keeping him doesn't stop you from bringing in competition, some cheap developmental arm, a late pick, a project. What you can't do is cut your own safety net just because the market feels like overpaying for it. And this is why it stays hot. That conversation doesn't really die until after the draft, because that's when the teams that missed at quarterback start panicking, and suddenly those no-way offers get a little louder. So what matters more to you, peace of mind or the rush of winning the trade? Now, while that's simmering, there's another name floating around the league that screams win now. And when he's right, he changes how the field is defended, flat out. There's a detail a lot of people are avoiding because it messes with your imagination and your fear at the same time. Tyreek Hill is available. Yeah, that Tyreek. One of the most explosive players of this era, a guy who forces defenses to adjust before the ball is even snapped. But the real question, the one nobody can answer with certainty, is which Tyreek would show up in Santa Clara? The one who posted nearly 1,800 yards and terrorized everybody. or the 32-year-old coming off major knee surgery. Because that difference decides whether this is a brilliant swing or a very expensive headache. And the fit is obvious, right? Shanahan's offense lives on motion, timing, leverage, post-snap stress. Drop pure speed into that system, speed that makes safeties back up, widens the margin for error, turns routine concepts into chunk plays, and you change what defenses are allowed to do. It opens space underneath. It freezes linebackers. It stretches the red zone horizontally and vertically. Then you layer in Brock Purdy's efficiency on money downs, even in a season where the roster was depleted. A healthy Tyreek doesn't just add talent, he warps defensive math. And I mean it. How many snaps before Levi's Stadium is losing its mind on a 60-yard shot down the sideline? But what doesn't get talked about enough is the hidden cost. It's not just the salary number, it's the domino effect. Paying Tyreek means you're deciding how money gets spread across the receiver room, the offensive line, the defense. You're making a timeline statement. Now matters more than later. And that lines up with what this roster actually is. Christian McCaffrey isn't playing forever. Trent Williams isn't blocking forever. This window is real, and it's not endless. So the uncomfortable question becomes, do you protect flexibility for the future? Or do you push chips into the middle for a playoff run right now? And yeah, the faithful is going to split on this one too. Some of you see Tyreek as the missing accelerator, the piece that turns an efficient offense into a weekly problem. Others look at the injury, the age, the money, and you see the trap teams fall into, paying for what a player was instead of what he's about to be. Because speed is usually the first thing time takes. If he's back at 90%, is it still worth it? If it's 70%, does it still scare defenses? Or does it become more jersey hype than weekly impact? There's also the system connection. Tyreek exploded with Mike McDaniel, who came out of the Shanahan tree. The concepts won't feel foreign. The language won't feel alien. That helps. But familiarity doesn't pay bonuses, and it doesn't guarantee the body cooperates. This can't be about who Tyreek used to be. It has to be about who he'd be in red and gold this fall. And while all of that is swirling, another storyline keeps heating up, and it's not on offense. It's on the side of the ball that could bring back the nasty edge this defense hasn't consistently had in the biggest moments. Everyone wants to say the defensive issues are simple. Just execute better. But here's the contradiction nobody wants to sit with. It's not just execution, it's presence. It's the lack of that one guy who makes an opposing offense build a protection plan around him all week. That's why the idea of Maxx Crosby keeps popping up around the Bay. It sounds like fan fiction. It sounds like internet noise. But sometimes the biggest moves start exactly like that. Half jokes until they're not jokes anymore. Let's be blunt. The pass rush didn't feel inevitable often enough. There were pressures, sure. But did it feel like there's nowhere to go on 3rd and long? Not consistently. Crosby is the kind of edge rusher who changes that. Endless motor. Violence at the point of attack. Production that doesn't care whether the team around him is stable. And the impact isn't just his sack total. He speeds up bad decisions. He creates picks that don't show up in his stat line. He turns late-game drives into panic. So really ask yourself, how many tight games flip if you get one extra pressure at the exact right moment? Now, reality check. He's under contract. He's supposed to be the foundation over there. And still, you see little signals. Lyrics referencing the Bay. Cultural nods that feel a little too specific to be random. Does that guarantee anything? No, but it's the kind of breadcrumb the faithful notices, because we've seen players hint at preferred destinations in subtle ways before. And whether Crosby is just having fun, trolling, or trying to send a message, nobody can say for sure. Nothing's locked in. But the thought of him in red and gold instead of silver and black? That's the kind of thought that turns a quiet offseason into a loud one. Of course, the price would be brutal. Not just draft picks, cap structure, depth, the whole roster blueprint. Bringing in a name like that means trading stability for impact, and that splits a fan base immediately. Some of you want the all-in move without blinking. Others want balance, trusting the system more than the superstar. And honestly, that argument makes sense either way. But while that dream is expensive and complicated, there's a decision much closer to home, real, immediate, that could decide whether this offense keeps its identity or loses one of the few physical pillars it can't just replace overnight. Jauan Jennings is that guy your coaching staff loves and your salary cap spreadsheet hates. He's not the fastest. He's not the box score king across the league. But he's the dude who shows up on third down, blocks like a tight end, plays through contact, and gives the offense an edge when the game gets heavy. That's why this is tricky. If you pay him for what he means to the team, you might pay more than his raw production suggests. And if you don't pay him, you might lose something you can't replace with a quick signing and a good speech. Here's the practical fallout. The wide receiver market isn't loaded. If Jennings walks, you're not just plugging in 3 ready-made options. You're leaning on the draft and hoping, not guaranteeing. You're asking for immediate chemistry, immediate timing, immediate trust, inside an offense that demands precision. So think about that for a second. Do you really want Brock Purdy building consistency while you're rebuilding relationships at the same time? Now, I'm going to make a prediction that's going to split the comments. If the 49ers pay Jennings too much, that contract could age poorly on the back end. Not because he's a bad player, because bodies wear down, availability swings, and the money gets tight. And the ripple effect doesn't stop at one deal. When you pay one guy above his numbers, you set a tone in the locker room. Other negotiations get louder. Other comparisons get made. But letting him walk creates an immediate hole too. Who becomes the physical chain mover? Who becomes the trusted target when the game tightens up and you need one conversion to keep a drive alive? Season totals don't capture what a single third down win does for a playoff run. That's real football value. So what do you prioritize? Saving money and risking identity, or paying for continuity and risking regret later? And that's why the opening promise wasn't hype. The wildest part is that all of this comes back to one question. Do you protect the present or bet on the future? Keeping Mac Jones is choosing insurance. Taking a swing at Tyreek is choosing maximum upside with real risk. Dreaming on a pass rush monster is choosing a new identity. Paying Jennings is choosing continuity over flexibility. None of it is painless. So I'm putting it on you, faithful. Which path are you taking? Drop your take in the comments. Hit subscribe if you ride with this team year-round. And tell me what you'd prioritize. Quarterback insurance? A home run threat? A game-wrecking pass rusher? Or keeping the physical heartbeat of the receiver room?